Make it plain.
Make it plain.
M.I.P.
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make it plain.
Get woke.
God bless you. Get woke. Folks, MIP is now COVID-free, meaning free to all subscribers as we navigate this pandemic. We're thinking about everyone, and we've got to get through this together. So for a limited time, no fee to subscribe to Make It Plain on your favorite podcast app. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to welcome to Make It Plain right now a state senator from Arkansas who is running for Congress now. She's been in the Arkansas State Legislature for a number of years. We want to hear all about it and her incredible story. Running for Congress from Arkansas is State Senator Joyce Elliott. Senator Elliott, how are you?
I am doing well. This is hard work. Anybody who says it's not, it's not running the race fully. It's been such a journey during the pandemic, but I have to always remember everybody has the same handicap, so to speak. But, you work hard and you get good news like we got over the weekend, and you feel, more profoundly assured that this is something that we can do and that people are behind. So.
And that good news is you are within 1 point of the
yes.
incumbent, correct?
That's right. 1.5 points of the incumbent, and which is virtually a tie, of course. But we are in a red state where everybody keeps talking about it can't be done. I've actually called people, Mark, where people said, "Oh, it's Arkansas. I can't give you a contribution in Arkansas. You can't. Basically, you can't do that." And so we've just adopted the mantra, like many other people. Yeah, we are a red state until we're not anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I've just had the good fortune of having so many people step up to work on this campaign, which is a testament to our message of unity, unlike what we see at the national level, because our campaign is a reflection of all the different kinds of groups in our state, and that's a wonderful thing for us. Because we can't win without doing that. Arkansas is the only one of the old slave states that's never elected an African American, the only one. And in addition to being a good candidate, we have a chance to make history. And the type of groups that are behind us, or the coalition of folks behind us, makes that very possible. So,
but Arkansas did elect the first Black president, right?
Well, some people said that. I try to be very thoughtful about that. Yeah, some people did indeed say that. Yeah, and I have to say, it's really interesting with Bill Clinton because we both grew up in the southwestern part of the state. We were both born in the same area of the state, probably about 20, 25 miles apart in that little corner of Arkansas. But I kind of always knew I was Black. That didn't have to be discovered.
That didn't have to be an announcement. It was clear. But it says something, though. I have to go back and just wonder what happened. Because you had an Arkansan and a Tennessean to the White House, and it's like everything just flipped. So it seems to me if it was that way at one time, yes, what you're doing can't be that far-fetched.
It is not that far-fetched. And I think what people do so many times, Mark, when they see something that's changed, especially if they're not used to having to work hard for every little step they get to make, which is what I've had to do as a politician and largely even as a person growing up in the South. But Barack Obama happened is the major thing. And that is not an overstatement because, we had been a Democratic state for, over 100 years or so. And when the Tea Party got started and President Obama was in the White House, that's where the big switch came from. And so people need to think about this too. Well, if it switched after President Obama was in the White House, he went to the White House in 2008. Mm-hmm. That's only 12 years ago. So one of the other advantages we have is that we have not been red that long. So it's not as deeply red as people tend to think. You just have to believe in it enough to go like, no, we can change this. And, that's what I'm stepping up to do.
Marvin often preached the same sermon about how Obama was another Reconstruction,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure, come to think of it, during Reconstruction, were there any Arkansans in Congress, with any black Arkansans?
And no, there were some though in the House and Senate, but not in Congress. Yeah, but Arkansas, Arkansas is kind of on the cusp of Midwest and South, and part of Arkansas is hills, the Ozarks and so forth, and so there's a wide swath of Arkansas that was people didn't have slaves, all they could do, they had just had rocks. So because of that, Arkansas has really not ever been, even as when it was a Democratic state, not a deeply divided state by politics. And so this it's been kind of a natural thing for us to come back together when we clearly see now. That's the kind of folks I'm attracting. We say, okay, we've never been like this. We can do better than that. We just need somebody to show us that it's possible. And I'm not giving myself all that credit. I'm just the conduit. But my whole life has been that way. I integrated to school when I was 15 years old. That was tough. And I learned.
What school did you integrate?
I was not in Little Rock. I grew up in South Arkansas in a little bitty school. It was Willisville High School, tiny little school. So tiny, there were 9 people in my graduating class. So there was no place to get lost or to hide. You were always somebody's target because there was nowhere to go. And so that's part of the time, I learned that public service really could play a positive role, because I began to realize it was through somebody's supposedly public service that we were divided, that we had kids who didn't like each other, who didn't know any better. Somebody taught us all that stuff. And I decided that I am, despite everything, I'm going to put my roots down right here in Arkansas. And that's why I've remained in Arkansas. I'm going to put my roots down right here in the South, because the blood, sweat, and tears of my ancestors are in this red dirt where I grew up. So I stayed here, and I've been committed through public service to make the change, and I've not been sorry about that. It's worked out well.
Well, clearly you haven't, and you haven't been sorry about that. So now you integrated that little high school.
Yes, along with my sister. Yeah, my sister was the first African-American to graduate from that school. I was 1 year behind her. But it was this thing people call freedom of choice. People don't understand the history behind choice sometimes. And so it was my family and about 4 or 5 others. And so we were there just to integrate the school, de facto integrate it. But at semester, we were all called together and told we could go back to our Black school. And they expected us to do so. That was the first time I took a hard stand, Mark, on something that scared me, because out of the blue, I just said, something just came over me. I was 15 and I just knew there was something wrong with somebody wanted to send me back. So I just blurted out, I'm not going. And I got hot all over. Okay, is anybody staying with me? And sure enough, the other families did not. But luckily, my brother and sisters did. So we were there. We were the ones who were left there to take a stand.
Well, it's always important to hear these stories. And of course, we've all heard the story of Little Rock. But
yes.
Good to hear your story as well. And I can imagine whenever that happened in small, not so prominent places with a lot of media coverage.
Yes.
It took a little more heat because there wasn't as much light shown upon your situation. Whereas Little Rock, the world was watching. Your situation, that must have been pretty harrowing to do if there was not a lot of light shown on it.
It wasn't. I keep saying, and I should have done it already, I'm going to write a book one day called There Were No Cameras, because that was the case. But what it did do for me, though, I got a lot of good out of it, that's informed my life. Because of teachers, I had teachers at the all-Black school who thought I was all that and I could do anything and respected me. But I did not have those same teachers when we changed schools. But it did cement in me this need to be the kind of teacher that I did not have, and which is one of the major reasons I became a teacher. And one of the major reasons when I first taught, despite a lot of opportunities, I chose to teach in a school where there were black and white kids, but they did not have a black teacher in that school.
Wow.
There was one teacher who taught there, I think maybe an hour a day, and then there was a coach who was there. But when I showed up with my big fro and my skirt, I was trying to pull down because there was mini skirt time and looked like a teacher. I was there to be a role model for white kids as well as black kids, because the thing I learned is the white kids in a lot of ways were victims just as much as the black kids, in a different kind of way, because they had to live in this world. And I thought, I'm going to be that teacher. And that's been the through line of my life, to try to bring people together.
So, Senator, you integrated a school as a student and then integrated a school as a teacher.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yes. So what happened between? Where'd you go to college?
I went to college in Arkansas, to Southern Arkansas University. And there a whole story behind that real quickly is that, it was not where I thought I was going to go initially. But since I had decided that I was going to stay right here and make change right here, I basically was part of integrating that college as well, because I thought, why go? I had an uncle who would offer to pay everything if I'd come to Michigan and go to school, because he was a military guy in World War II who came back and hated the South and wanted me to leave. And I thought, no, I'm going to do this right here. And so my class in the year that I started was the largest African-American class that had gone to that school. And that was not all that large.
Amazing story. So how long are you still teaching?
I'm not still teaching. I taught for 30 years. I started teaching in 1973. Mm-hmm. And so I taught for 30 years. And when I was still teaching, when I first ran for office, and because Arkansas had the setup to where we met every other year for a session. And I didn't have the money to just say, I'm leaving the classroom and go be a legislator. So I had some overlap there for about 3 years. And when I became chair of the education committee, I had so many responsibilities, I had to make a choice. But by then I'd been teaching for 30 years.
Okay. So let's go back to something you said earlier. Some folks said to you, they can't give you money because you're in a red state. Do some of those folks include the DCCC? Are they helping you?
Yes, they are. It's been an interesting thing because I ran, by the way, in 2010 when a lot of other Democrats ran and nobody won. So, but I didn't get that kind of help in 2010, right after. But the DCCC has been incredibly supportive in this campaign. And they were anxious and excited that I'm running. And I give them credit for understanding that, this is a time that a black woman can win, the black woman is a good candidate. And so it's a completely different story from experiences that I know have happened before. So I hear you, but I need to give credit where credit's due. They're being very helpful to this campaign.
I'm glad to hear that they are supporting you. You mentioned some of the overlap between teaching and the legislating. You living in Arkansas too, I'm told from your story.
Yes.
Yes. It's like to be a working class person, living from paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
Just about that and how common that is amongst everyday Arkansans.
Yeah, it is very common because people were struggling before the pandemic. And so you know how much that's exacerbated things. But I grew up, my mom and dad split. We were living in Michigan when I first knew I was a kid, but I had been born in Arkansas and they'd moved there where the other uncle was. But when we moved back to Arkansas, they were split, and we moved in with my grandparents. And that was a 4-room house, and that included the kitchen. So that included the kitchen and an outhouse. But it was not anything that unusual. And so we were poor growing up. There's no two ways about it. But we had to figure out a way to make things work. And when I got ready to go to college, I had to figure out my school didn't have a counselor. I had to figure out how to get support through grants and loans and work study myself. But I figured it out. and I know that struggle of trying to do that and not having those role models to say, this is how you do it, or that's how you do it. So my second year of teaching, I got married by then, and my husband had a fellowship at University of South Florida. Well, he had been in education, so had I. We ate beanie weenies for a whole summer because he was in school. I was out of school by then, and we weren't getting paid in the summertime. I got a job working at a youth hostel, and they let us have a room without rent to live at that youth hostel. And you can make beanie weenies go a long way on a hot plate. But it's been good for me in recognizing when people struggle, I understand what that means of not having health insurance, of being empathetic as a contrast to my opponent, who grew up well-to-do and still seems to be very unempathetic or even sympathetic about the way people struggle. He's voted, 13 times or more to repeal the Affordable Health Care Act. And he does a good job of looking out for the wealthy in Congress, I'll tell you that. He's probably Wall Street's favorite person. Special interest is his thing, and people's interest is my thing. So, there's a clear choice here, and I'm making sure people know what that is.
So, just to be clear, Arkansas did not expand Medicaid, correct?
No, Arkansas, no, this is a good story. Arkansas was the first Southern state to expand Medicaid.
Well, they did.
Yeah, and added 300,000 people, to the roles of having health care. We had, at the time, we had a Democratic governor, so we've not been red as long as people think. We had a Democratic governor, but we had a House that was still barely Democratic, if I'm remembering correctly, but in the Senate, where I was, we had a Senate that was dominated by Republicans. So we had to pass it, obviously, on both ends. And in the Senate is where we really had to work hard to work together so that people could get health insurance. And it's been quite successul. It's gotten some attacks by our now current Republican governor, but it's lasted just the same, and I think everybody has benefited from having that.
So, what is the COVID situation in Arkansas right now?
We have just in the last 2 or 3 days become what's called one of the red states, because we have not had we've not had a solid plan, kind of like nationally, where people have come together and said, there's not been a call for us to say, let's take some public responsibility. And we have struggled with our numbers fluctuating up and down, but lately the numbers have really gone up. And yesterday they started to come down again. And in a small state, where we got relief from the federal government, we got the third lowest relief funding per worker of any state in the United States, even though my opponent is one of the persons that's on the oversight committee, whatever they call it, for those funds. But it has hit us hard. And a lot of it is because people are, I think following the national lead of not taking seriously what we all need to do for one another. We've started school. And that's been a real problem for many schools. And right here in my district, there are schools that are going to be closing because they got started, and now they have to. Things have gotten out of hand. So it's been a hardship for us, very much so.
So aside, Senator Elliott, from COVID and healthcare, what are some of the other issues that our kids will be voting on come November?
A big thing for us is infrastructure, and I think that's true across the country too. But I just think about schools restarting. The infrastructure problem, was exactly that was on blast again. Of kids, families who thought they were well connected realized that they did not have all the broadband that they needed, even to have their kids at home and be on several devices. And people who thought they were above that found out they really weren't. So, that's a large part of our infrastructure issue, but it's also true about the roads and bridges and the safety of it all. And the other issues, we here in Arkansas struggle with the justice issues like everybody else across the country that have been brought to the, to the fore. And we have a lot of young people, but people across the board. That's another thing that's been as bad as it was to have to be in the street about the Black Lives Matter movement. I've seen people from all different backgrounds come together, to fight for a common good. I often think if we had the same kind of attitude toward the pandemic that we've had toward, coming together over the Black Lives Matter movement, we would be much better off when it comes to the pandemic. So maybe out of that, we can learn some of those things, going forward. But, and I think the other thing that education is an issue outside of the pandemic, because one of the things I think every kid deserves is not just an adequate education, but a world-class education system. When I was first in the House, one of the things we did not have a pre-K program, and I was a part of creating a pre-K program that was #1 in the nation for several years. And then, like so many things, we quit funding things as we should, and we let them backslide. But we know what we need to do for all kids to have a good shot from the beginning. And we need to get back to those kind of things and away from so much of the division. Because I study countries that are called the highest performing countries in the world. And they are doing, Mark, what's interesting, so many of the things that we started out doing in the United States, but we have stopped. And they look at us and go, we learned this from you, so why did you stop doing this? It's kind of like a no-brainer. I highly respect our educational professionals in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned Black Lives Matter. Has there been Black Lives Matter activity and demonstrations in Arkansas?
Oh, yes. Yeah. My district includes all of Little Rock and North Little Rock, the urban area. So we saw it first here, and that was to be expected. But the rest of the district is the outer county is very rural. And one of those counties is a White County. That's the name of the county. I'm not talking about the people who are in it. It's White County's name of it. But it's predominantly, Caucasian folks who live there, known predominantly as being very conservative. But I was actually invited to a Black Lives Matter rally in that county. Things have changed so much. It's changed a lot of things here around us. And I attended. I couldn't be as involved in the rallies, even here in Little Rock, as I wanted to, because I'm a kidney donor, and that's, I have to try to protect that one I still have left. And so we had to figure out different ways I could be involved, like getting back to the pickup truck and, talking from the truck. But, in another county, a larger county just south of where I live now, Saline County, same thing happened there with the Black Lives Matter movement. So I wish people would get to, some people need to get to know Arkansas better, and that includes some people right in Arkansas, because a lot of people, especially younger people, and those who just want a more inclusive world, are changing our state right around people who keep insisting it's the same. Well, it's not. Because when you have the kind of activity we had during the Black Lives Matter movement, things are very, very different. So we have lots of people who moved from other places as well.
That's good to know. So, State Senator Joyce Elliott, what do you need to win? Do you know in terms of numbers? I spoke to Mike Espy in Mississippi. And if you heard the little he needs to win in Mississippi, Mississippi like Arkansas, Mississippi hadn't elected anyone since Reconstruction to the Senate. Yeah. And it seems these margins are so small. If we could just get our folk out, I know you'd have it.
That's exactly right. Because, for example, I'm an educator. 1 in 10 donors that have given to me are, work in education. If I could just think about, if just educators would turn out, I would win this race. It is also the case that if there are so many people who've not voted, if we could get, I say, about 3 to 6% more of the folks who've not been voting, I would win this race. And so it is very, very doable. And right now, what that poll showed that I mentioned early on, the folks that are now, quote unquote, gettable, who not only 6% have not made up their minds. I mean, we are like at 46 and 47%, my opponent and I, with 6% whose minds have not been made up. That 6% is made up of people from like ages 18 to 44. Those are the people that I attract. So we know that we need to go after these, these targeted groups, and we're doing that, and we're not taking anything for granted. And the other thing I need, people out there, you might not like it, but you can't win races without money. So you can go to JoyceElliott.com, www.joyceelliott.com, and make a contribution. It doesn't matter how small it is. Because right now, Mark, I'm so happy I have contributions from every state in our country, all 50 states, from Puerto Rico, from the Virgin Islands, from Guam, and someplace else I'm probably forgetting. And most of those are small donations. Yeah. But on the other hand, if you have been, as my grandpa would say, blessed in the pocket, you can contribute $2,800. That's the max. If you can do that, do it, because what we're doing here in Arkansas matters. And when we talk about representation matters, it matters that only 4% of African-American women are in the Congress, 4%. And we make up about 8% of the whole population in the country. And so the representation greatly needs to be enhanced, and I could be a part of that.
8% of the whole population, but about 150% of political influence these days when it comes to Black women. So it's really disproportionate on that level. Okay, so let me ask this. What about, Lord have mercy, mail-in balloting in Arkansas? Y'all good, or is there going to be some drama too?
It's been drama about that. I have a proposal because we don't have in our state no excuse absentee voting. So I offered a proposal to get that changed, and of course the Republicans voted it down. But we kept the light on it so much, the governor finally did issue an executive order to say we could have no excuse voting except just to say the pandemic, that kind of thing. But we do at this point, though, the Republican Party, especially right here in my county where I live, is giving the county clerk all kinds of problems about the mail-in ballots, just throwing up, red flags and causing a problem. But, when are we going to open them? Or how many can you take? Or when are they going to be mailed back? Those kind of things. So what we have to do, probably like a lot of people, Mark, is just to be absolutely diligent about making sure people know not only just how to do it, but what to anticipate where people will keep you from trying to do it. So I have put a video where I show line by line how to fill out your absentee ballot request. So we have to do all of that work of educating people.
Now, when do ballots go out? How early can people get ballots and vote in Arkansas?
Well, we will start voting on the 9th. They can already request ballots, okay. And we will start voting on the 19th of October. So that includes early, but we have an early voting too, like 2 weeks prior to the election itself. But I've already requested a ballot. I haven't seen it yet in the mail. I keep looking for it, but if I don't get it soon, I'm going to walk down to the office and do some talking about this. So
I'm sure you are amazing. It's so nice to meet you, and really excited about your race. Wishing you all the luck in the world. How long has your opponent been in office?
He was elected, and he's in his 3rd term. So that's 5 years. Well, 6 years, actually, going on 6 years. Yeah.
Well, folks, we got to keep pushing, and we have to be sure that Joyce Elliott is elected to Congress in Arkansas. Go to JoyceElliott.com. Everyone, ma'am, please, sir, let all your friends and relatives know. Send her a few dollars, too, for this campaign so we can try to make this happen. Very important that we get Joyce Elliott on Capitol Hill.
And thank you for having me on. I catch you every time you're on somebody's show on TV, MSNBC. We've got you down in Arkansas. Absolutely.
Bless your heart. I appreciate that. You keep up the good work. Maybe we'll talk again before Election Day.
I love that.
All our luck in the world. We wishing you all the luck we can, okay?
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. God, you are our refuge. Send our ancestors to guard our doors. Cast out this virus from our communities and our bodies. Heal, bless, and protect everyone listening and their loved ones. Thank you for listening to Make It Plain and Get Woke. Remember to listen, like, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If all minds are clear, it has been made plain.